welcome. It's Michaela. So today I'm gonna be reading this book backwards. You're probably wondering why and like how did we even get here? It is all thanks to my mother. She called me and was like, "Hey Michaela, you know what will be interesting? If we read a book backwards." Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more. I'm always here for my friends and family's shenanigans. So here we are. We ended up picking out this one. It's called The Light We Lost, and we're gonna attempt to read this backwards. Now, as for the rules and like how we're gonna go about reading this backwards, we're not gonna like start from the bottom of the page and go up and, you know, do it like that. The easiest way we figured out how to do this is just to read starting with the last chapter and then just going back each chapter. So we'll start with the first page of the last chapter and then read all the way to that end of the chapter, then go to the next chapter over, and so on. So like we're gonna still be getting the story, but it'll be backwards and in pieces. It sounds like it could be an interesting one to read backwards just from the synopsis. It looks like it might kind of flip between present day and then the past. So I think we might get a little bit more understanding of what's going on, even though we're starting at the end of the book. Anyway, let's just get started. Okay, here we go. I'm starting at the last chapter at the back of this book. Here we go. Oh gosh. He was the first person to inspire her, to move her, to truly understand her. Was he meant to be the last? Lucy is faced with a life-altering choice, but before she can make her decision, she must start her story, their story, at the very beginning. Lucy and Gabe met as seniors at Columbia University on a day that changes both of their lives. Together, they decide they want their lives to mean something, to matter. When they meet again a year later, it seems fated. Perhaps they'll find life's meaning in each other. But then, Gabe becomes a photojournalist assigned to the Middle East, and Lucy pursues her career in New York. What follows is a 13-year odyssey of dreams, jealousies, and ultimately of love. Lucy will begin a new life with handsome and reliable Darren, and Gabe will travel the world. Their journey will take Lucy and Gabe continents apart, but never out of each other's hearts. And Lucy will find herself asking, was it fate that brought them together, and is it choice that has kept them away? Lucy's powerful voice brings to life the universal truth of first love, of being completely understood for the first time. This last chapter was actually pretty good. It was just kind of like a shock, like one line was just like, wait, what? So I am really enjoying this. I'm really enjoying this. Honestly, I'm sitting here thinking like if this was a murder mystery and like I knew who did it and then we were kind of working backwards to figure out how we got there, I don't know if I would enjoy this as much. Or if this was like a fantasy book that had like really heavy world building in the beginning of the book, but I'm starting at the end so I don't understand this world or this universe. I don't know if I would like that much either, but I like this book. This is a good one. My mom had a good pick with this one because it's not confusing. I mean, it's a little like, I wonder what that is, but I'm interested. Let's keep reading kind of thing. It takes place in kind of like modern day America, definitely post 9/11 because they talk about that. And because I'm familiar with those events, it's like easy to kind of piece together like why things are happening. I'm pleasantly surprised that this is actually going okay and that I'm not like sitting here like, oh my god, this is so confusing, I don't know what's going on. We're on page 300 and the book is actually really good. The only thing I feel like I don't like is I don't know who these people are. So she'll say some names like, oh, Kate and Darren and Alan or Adam or whatever, and I'm just like, who are these people? So that's a little bit frustrating where I kind of want to like jump to the front of the book and like scan to see if I can figure out who these people are, but I'll trust the process. Since this was a buddy read with my mom, I wanted to know like what were some of her opinions from this challenge and like how did she even come up with this idea in the first place? Here's what she had to say.
So currently I'm into watching historical Korean dramas thanks to one of my sisters. Anyway, while watching a few and watching how they read, I had the idea to try and read a book from right to left. Of course, I didn't want to do it all alone, so I called up the only person I could possibly get to try this with me, Mac. It was easy to persuade her, very easy. I think overall for me, it went well. And would I do this again? Absolutely. I would try it again and just hope that I get a really good book like the last one we read.
Okay, so I'm on page 56 and I'm coming to the conclusion that I know what's going on now. On page 56, knowing that I started the book at page 300 or whatever number this is, it felt like she was talking to somebody, or like maybe writing a book, or like explaining to somebody, you know, the story of her life. And I'm starting to think that she's talking to him. Well, obviously I feel like she was talking to him because she keeps using you when she's talking about Gabe. And then of course she'll say Darren and he when she's talking about Darren. So I assume this was like a letter or a book that she was writing, but on page 56, I feel like she's actually talking to him. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm starting to piece things together of like what this is. It's not a letter, it's not a book. She's actually talking to him. I also started to heavily kind of like annotate. I don't usually annotate books, but I started annotating this book because I wanted to be able to go back to some of these things in the book that I either had questions about, that I'm now finding out the answers to now that I'm at the beginning of the book, or things that I'm just like, who is this person? I'm like making a note to remind myself. I think I also do have a few little like quotes in here that I kind of liked that were interesting. So I've never really annotated a book, but this one I had to because there's so many questions. Okay. Is that it? All right. That ending, or I guess I should say the beginning, was a little bit, what? Okay. Really? Okay. Let's talk about this book. All right, just finished reading The Light We Lost backwards, which is why I have all of my sticky notes here to help me, you know, keep track of like what was going on in the book. I actually really enjoyed this experience of reading a book backwards. And if I'm being honest, my mom honestly picked the perfect book to do that because you were able to read this backwards. I think it really helped that this was set in like a real world situation and it was like surrounding this like historic event that happened. So having knowledge on that event, having knowledge of like just things that are happening around that time, I think helped you piece things together a little bit more. It wasn't like it was in a fantasy setting where you had to know the world building in order to actually realize what was going on a lot of the time. So I think I just specifically for that reason, I think I'm gonna give this like a 3.5 stars because I enjoyed the experience of being able to read this backwards. Like you can 100% read this book backwards and I think it still makes sense. The end of the book, as in like my ending, the very beginning, chapter 1 of this book, was very dull. I guess I just had all these questions that I was like, I can't wait to get to the front of the book so they can answer all my questions. And then I was like, what? Like, that's it? Like, that's it? Like, what is going on here? You know what I mean? You know, I had to journal about this, and to represent the challenge of reading a book backwards, I am going to turn my journal upside down for this spread because there was no way I was going to be able to write a review backwards. So diving a little bit into the relationships of this book, I actually really liked the relationship between Gabriel and Lucy in the middle of the book. This was like when they're right out of college, you know, early 20s, it's young love, it's first love. They are just absolutely consumed with each other. I liked that relationship. I thought it was going to answer a lot of questions that I had about the relationship, and it just didn't. It fell a little bit flat, and how much the relationship kind of consumed them didn't really make sense to me after reading the beginning of the book and how their relationship started. If you read this book, recommend reading it backwards, try it out. But if you read this book backwards, the ending packs such a punch. Like, how do I explain this without saying too much? Let me see. Let me look at this real quick. Yeah, it's right here. The third paragraph on the first page gives you like a jolt of like, what's going on? That you would not get otherwise if you read this book forwards, because you would already know what happened and like why it happened. But when I read this book the first time, even my mom called me and was like, what? And I was like, I don't know, girl, we gotta figure this out. We gotta keep reading to figure it out. So the ending packs a punch if you read it backwards. If you don't, it's not gonna pack a punch because there's no like surprise or nothing to like find out or reveal. So that was interesting. If you're familiar with the book, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, you'll know that that book is told from Evelyn when she's older, and she's basically just recounting her life moments, her life memories to a reporter for a magazine. This book really read kind of like that. I was like, who is she talking to? Is this a letter? Is this a book? Is she sitting on the porch talking to her grandkids? Like, what is this? I had no idea who she was talking to, like, at the end of the book. And it wasn't until about the middle of the book that I realized, okay, she's talking to Gabe. Lucy is talking to Gabe, all right? But like, what? So then I was like, when I get to the beginning of the book, I'm gonna find out exactly who she's talking to, what this is about. I didn't find out any of those things. My questions were not answered at all. I guess the question was supposed to be answered at the end of the book, but like reading it from the end, I didn't get that. I don't know. Maybe I missed something. I also thought that their relationship was a bit toxic on Gabriel's end, just because it was a little bit selfish, and the things that he was asking Lucy to do for him, it just was a little bit selfish. Now, the relationship between Lucy and her husband, Darren, was also not the best. I mean, I think it was supposed to be presented as if this was a better relationship, but I think, again, it was slightly toxic. I think Darren was a little bit controlling, but tried to be like the nice guy, but I definitely think he had some controlling tendencies in there. It was a little odd. Sometimes huge life events can happen and change people's lives. I think that was what this was trying to convey. Lucy and Gabe met during 9/11 and like literally were in New York at the time, obviously going to Columbia University. They watched the whole thing happen and kind of just had this moment of overwhelming, I want to live my life now and to the fullest, which makes a lot of sense watching something like that happen. One thing I really appreciated about this book, especially reading it backwards, was the pacing was so fast, especially towards the end of the book. Well, actually, I'm not thinking about it. The pacing was fast throughout the entire book. I think most of the chapters were about 2 or 3 pages long. That was it. I think the longest chapter I'll say was probably like 5 or 6 pages, but normally the chapters were like 3 pages, which really helped in like piecing things together a little bit quicker. And I would say like the time frame jumped a lot. So it would be like summer 1 year, and then the next chapter would be like winter 2 years later. Like the pacing was just like boom, 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 boom. Like it was so quick, which helped in the whole, I don't know what's going on, I need to quickly find out what's going on thing. Again, just thinking about if I were to read this book forward, I just don't know if I would appreciate that, because I would be like, what happened? Like all this time, like what happened between you doing this summer and then winter 2 years from now? And I think I would miss that piece of this. So I just don't think I would have liked this book as much reading it the right way. Another thing I found that was kind of fun and interesting was like my perception of what the characters look like versus when I get to the front of the book what they actually look like. So here's like a mood board of what I thought Lucy looked like, what I thought Gabe looked like, what I thought Darren looked like, even what I thought the dog looked like. I was really going in. I was like, oh, the dog looks like this, and it's, you know, and then I find out the truth. And I was off, very much so on Gabe, for sure. I feel like I was definitely off on that. But I thought it was kind of fun to make up my own characters in my mind versus like the book telling you up front what, you know, people look like, who people are, that kind of thing. While I was reading, I also bookmarked a couple of quotes that I liked, and this one is from Lucy's friend Kate, who was giving her some relationship advice, and she told her that her older sister always compared relationships to fires, and so the quote says, "Some relationships feel like a wildfire. They're powerful and compelling and majestic and dangerous and have the capability to burn you before you even realize you've been consumed. And some relationships feel like a hearth fire. They're solid and stable and cozy and nourishing." I really loved this quote when I read it because I think it's perfect to describe both of Lucy's relationships, the wildfire relationship with Gabe and the hearth fire relationship with Darren. I also feel like it's a great analogy for like the internal struggle that she feels. I think that she's somebody who kind of wants a little bit of a happy medium between a wildfire and a hearth. But I also, for some reason, feel like she leans a little bit towards the wildfire versus the hearth. I don't know. I thought this was just perfect. One thing that the author did that I really appreciated that I don't think my mom really liked so much was she didn't go into too much detail about what a person looked like, who they were, like what was their relation to Lucy or to Gabe. Like she just touched on it briefly and kept it moving. It did spark questions, and especially if you're gonna read the book backwards, it did spark questions of like, who is this, and like how are they related to this person, or where do they fit in this story? But when you think about the writing and the way that it's written, it's literally like a conversation from Lucy to Gabe. So you're talking to somebody who already knows what your friends look like, who already knows that this is your brother and this is your cousin and this is your mom. Like they already know that information, so you wouldn't say it to them. Like you wouldn't do that, you know what I mean? So after realizing that this was a conversation, I was like, okay, I don't mind this piece of it. It would have helped just a little bit to figure out like who is who, but I can't complain about that. I'm the one that chose to read this book backwards, so that's kind of on me. Well, friend, that was an adventure. Thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. It was a lot of fun. I actually really enjoyed this experience, and I think I would do it again. I just need to find the perfect book to try this again with. If you have not seen my February reading journal wrap-up video, I will be sure to link it right here on the left-hand side of the screen. And once my March reading journal is updated, I'll be sure to link that video right here on the right-hand side of the screen. Go check those out, and I will see you over there. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.